The conference room erupted in laughter the moment the strange metal cylinder rolled onto the polished table. One executive covered his mouth to hide a grin, another openly shook his head, and the CEO leaned back with a smile filled with contempt. Across the room stood a quiet single father whose worn jacket, tired eyes, and trembling hands made him look like he had already lost everything. What none of them realized was that within the next few hours, the United States Navy would walk through those same doors and reveal that the invention they had mocked could change underwater history forever. Before this incredible journey begins, if you believe kindness is stronger than pride, forgiveness is more powerful than revenge, and everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our community. Graham Mercer had never imagined that his greatest invention would be carried inside an old canvas toolbox with a broken zipper. He had once worked as a respected marine engineer, spending years studying underwater propulsion systems before his small research company collapsed under financial pressure. The bankruptcy took away his laboratory, his reputation, and nearly every possession he owned. His wife had passed away after a long illness several years earlier, leaving him to raise his 10-year-old daughter, Clara, alone. Every morning he packed her lunch, braided her hair the best he could despite never truly mastering it, and reminded her that difficult days were only temporary visitors. She believed every word because she had never seen her father stop trying, even when life seemed determined to defeat him. Their tiny apartment overlooked an aging industrial district where freight trains passed throughout the day. Graham spent countless afternoons repairing discarded equipment while Clara quietly completed homework beside him. Instead of expensive toys, she grew up surrounded by gears, blueprints, and tiny mechanical parts. She didn't fully understand the mathematics covering her father's notebooks, but she understood something much more important. Every page represented hope. For nearly 6 years Graham had been developing a silent submarine engine unlike anything currently available. Traditional submarine propulsion always created tiny vibrations and acoustic signatures that sophisticated sonar could eventually detect. Graham believed he had discovered a way to eliminate most of those vibrations by redesigning the internal magnetic balancing system. The result was an engine that produced dramatically less underwater noise while remaining highly efficient. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't beautiful. It simply worked. Unfortunately, investors only saw an odd-looking prototype built from recycled components. They judged appearances before understanding performance. When North Atlantic Maritime Technologies announced an innovation competition with a life-changing engineering contract, Graham borrowed money from a neighbor just to print professional copies of his presentation. Winning would allow him to rebuild his career and secure Clara's future. Losing would likely force them to leave their apartment. On the morning of the competition, Clara hugged her father tightly before school. She slipped a folded drawing into his jacket pocket. It showed the two of them standing beside a shining submarine beneath bright blue skies. Across the top she had written, "People laugh before they understand miracles." Graham smiled all the way to the company headquarters. The headquarters reflected everything his own life no longer possessed. Marble floors, enormous glass windows, polished steel sculptures, and expensive artwork filled every hallway. Receptionists greeted executives by name while Graham waited quietly, holding his toolbox close like it contained the last pieces of his future. The company's CEO, Preston Caldwell, had built a reputation as an aggressive businessman who admired confidence above all else. He valued polished presentations, expensive suits, and powerful personalities. Graham possessed none of those qualities. When Graham finally wheeled his prototype into the presentation room, several executives exchanged amused glances before he had spoken a single sentence. Preston looked over the worn metal casing with visible disappointment. As Graham carefully explained years of research, advanced magnetic stabilization, vibration cancellation, and underwater efficiency, few people listened closely. Their attention remained fixed on the prototype's rough appearance rather than its remarkable engineering. Preston interrupted with a dismissive smile that he questioned how anyone could expect a billion-dollar defense company to take such an unpolished invention seriously. He implied that true innovation would never arrive inside scratched metal assembled by someone who looked as though he repaired lawnmowers instead of submarines. A few executives chuckled. Others looked away, embarrassed but unwilling to challenge their CEO. Graham remained calm. Humiliation had become familiar over recent years. Pride had long ago been replaced by quiet determination that he simply requested that they examine the performance data before making a decision. Preston barely glanced at the reports before rejecting the proposal. The meeting ended with polite handshakes that carried no sincerity. Graham slowly packed his prototype back into the toolbox, thanked everyone for their time, and walked toward the exit with shoulders heavier than when he had arrived. Outside the building, bright afternoon sunlight reflected across the city streets. Graham sat on a nearby bench holding Clara's drawing. For several minutes he wondered whether dreams eventually reached an age where they quietly expired. Then everything changed. A convoy of military vehicles entered the company parking area. Uniformed Navy officers stepped out alongside civilian defense researchers carrying secured equipment cases. The unexpected arrival immediately attracted attention throughout the headquarters. The officers requested an urgent meeting with Preston Caldwell regarding recent propulsion evaluations submitted through independent engineering databases. Confused, Preston welcomed them into the same conference room where Graham had just presented. One senior naval engineer placed several acoustic performance charts onto the table. The graphs displayed extraordinary results unlike anything previously recorded. During underwater testing, one anonymous prototype consistently produced dramatically lower acoustic signatures than current operational systems. The Navy had independently verified the submitted data after receiving technical documentation months earlier through an open engineering review program. The lead engineer asked who had designed the propulsion system. Silence filled the room. Someone quietly admitted that the inventor had just left after being rejected. Within seconds employees hurried through hallways searching for Graham. He was still sitting outside, staring thoughtfully at Clara's drawing when a young assistant rushed toward him, apologizing repeatedly and asking him to return inside immediately. Graham assumed paperwork had been forgotten. Instead, he found every executive standing as Navy officers respectfully greeted him. For the first time all day, nobody laughed. The senior engineer explained that Graham's balancing technology solved one of the most difficult problems in modern submarine engineering. Independent testing confirmed substantial reductions in detectable underwater vibration. While further development remained necessary, the concept possessed extraordinary strategic potential. The room grew completely silent. Preston slowly realized that the invention he had mocked hours earlier represented exactly the breakthrough major defense researchers had been seeking. He stared at Graham differently now, not because Graham had changed, because the truth had become impossible to ignore. The Navy requested a detailed technical demonstration inside the company's engineering laboratory. Graham patiently disassembled sections of the prototype while explaining every design decision. Complex theories suddenly became understandable because he spoke with genuine passion rather than arrogance. Engineers who had laughed earlier now filled notebooks with observations. One by one, skepticism transformed into admiration. The prototype was placed into controlled testing equipment. Measurements confirmed every claim. Noise levels dropped significantly below conventional systems. Efficiency exceeded expectations. Mechanical wear decreased through the innovative balancing design. Nobody spoke for several long moments after the final test concluded. Years of quiet sacrifice suddenly became visible. Through objective evidence, Preston approached Graham with an expression carrying something unfamiliar: regret. For decades he had believed leadership meant making quick judgments based upon confidence and appearance. That afternoon exposed how deeply that philosophy had failed him. He admitted that he had never truly listened. He confessed that Graham deserved respect from the moment he entered the room. The apology surprised everyone because powerful executives rarely admitted mistakes publicly. Graham looked toward the laboratory window where sunlight streamed across the polished floor. He remembered every rejection letter, every unpaid bill, every evening Clara pretended not to notice when dinner portions became smaller, every lonely hour spent repairing equipment after she had fallen asleep. Bitterness could have easily taken control. Instead, he chose something far more difficult: forgiveness. He accepted the apology not because humiliation had been acceptable, but because carrying resentment would only steal tomorrow's peace. The Navy awarded Graham a research partnership while North Atlantic Maritime Technologies offered full financial support for continued development under his leadership. Then under corporate control, his first request surprised the board. Instead of demanding luxury offices or executive privileges, Graham requested scholarships for struggling engineering students who lacked financial opportunities. He remembered too well how brilliant minds often disappeared simply because they couldn't afford to keep dreaming. Months passed beneath bright daytime skies filled with possibility. The research center expanded rapidly. Young engineers arrived from across the country eager to learn from someone who valued humility more than status. Graham insisted every new employee spend their first week studying failed experiments rather than successful ones because mistakes often taught lessons victories never could. Clara visited the laboratory after school almost every afternoon. She proudly watched experienced scientists seek advice from the father others had dismissed. One afternoon she noticed the original scratched prototype displayed inside a glass case near the entrance. Beside it stood a small plaque that it did not describe advanced engineering principles or military achievements. Instead it simply read, "Never judge an idea by the condition of the hands that built it." Visitors often stopped there longer than anywhere else. The display reminded everyone that greatness rarely arrives wearing expensive clothes or polished confidence. Sometimes it arrives carrying a worn toolbox held together by hope. Years later the silent propulsion system became one of the most respected engineering achievements of its generation. Graham received awards, honorary degrees, and international recognition. Yet his favorite possession remained the faded drawing Clara had slipped into his pocket on the morning everyone laughed. The paper had become worn around the edges, the colors had faded, but the message remained perfectly clear. People laugh before they understand miracles. Before this story comes to an end, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us whether you believe humility or determination is the greater strength when facing rejection, and share a moment when someone believed in you even after the world had given up. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. As another sunny afternoon settled over the research center, Graham watched Clara walk across the courtyard carrying books beneath a bright blue sky. She smiled the same hopeful smile that had carried them through years of hardship. Success had finally entered their lives, but not because fortune suddenly changed. It arrived because one exhausted single father refused to surrender his kindness when others offered humiliation, refused to abandon hope when rejection became routine, and refused to let pride become more important than purpose. The CEO learned that leadership begins with listening. The engineers learned that appearances never define genius. The Navy discovered a remarkable innovation hidden beneath ordinary metal. And a little girl discovered that her father had always been exactly who she believed he was, a quiet hero whose greatest invention was not a silent submarine engine, but an unbreakable heart that kept moving forward no matter how loudly the world laughed.